You can probably still smell the wax of the linoleum floor, cold against your cheek, and the taste of classroom dust. The teacher's whistle cut through the arithmetic lesson, sharp and sudden, signaling the strange ritual to begin immediately. You curled into a tight ball under the laminate desk, tucking your head between your knobby knees. It was a dress rehearsal for the end of the world, practiced right between recess and spelling bees. You didn't understand geopolitics, but you understood the heavy silence that fell over the room. Somewhere, a button could be pressed, and the sunlight outside the window would turn into blinding fire. Yet, when the drill ended, you simply dusted off your pants and opened your textbook again. This wasn't just obedience. It was the unconscious construction of a very specific mental fortress. You learned to hold two impossible truths. The world might end, but the homework is due. Psychologists call this productive cognitive dissonance, but for you, it was just a Tuesday morning. That early training is exactly why you don't unravel when the modern world catches fire today. You possess an almost eerie calm in a crisis that often baffles people born in safer decades. While others panic at uncertainty, you unconsciously revert to that quiet, protected space under the desk. You perform a rapid psychological triage, sorting issues into what you can control and what you must accept. It is a quiet superpower, forged in the shadow of a mushroom cloud that never actually came. But survival was only the baseline. The world outside the classroom was about to explode in color. In February 1964, you sat on the living room rug, bathed in the blue glow of the television. 4 men from Liverpool started playing, and you felt the floor shift beneath you for real. You watched your parents' confusion and realized that the adults didn't have all the answers anymore. The cultural bedrock cracked, teaching you that permanent things could vanish in a single broadcast. You probably remember the cold, metallic smell of silver coins clutched in your sweaty palm. Your mother sent you to the corner store for milk, completely alone, at 7 years old. You watched the coins physically leave your hand and disappear into the cashier's register forever. It wasn't abstract numbers on a screen. It was a finite reality you could actually lose. Then there was the morning walk to school, a daily solo expedition without a chaperone. No parents hovered nearby, no tracking apps existed, just you and the map in your head. You knew exactly which yard had the mean dog and which neighbor would wave hello. You learned to read the streets like a text, sensing safety and danger with animal instinct. That unsupervised freedom rewired your brain for a spatial independence that modern children rarely experience. But that freedom came with scrapes, burns, and bruises that would absolutely terrify parents today. You fell off your bicycle, skinning your knees raw on the unforgiving asphalt of the driveway. Instead of rushing to the emergency room, your mother simply said, "You're fine, go play." It sounds harsh now, but in that moment, she was handing you a profound gift. She was teaching you that pain is temporary and that you are not made of glass. You learned the vital difference between being hurt and being injured, a distinction lost today. And here's the part nobody talks about. They let you play with things that were dangerous. You handled chemistry sets with real chemicals and toy ovens that could actually burn your fingers. Your father handed you a heavy wrench, expecting you to help fix the family car's engine. You learned that the world is made of parts, and with patience, you can fix them. This dangerous play built a quiet confidence that you could handle whatever broke next in life. You remember a time when wanting something didn't mean getting it 5 seconds later. If you missed the movie at the downtown theater, it was simply gone, perhaps forever. You sat by the radio for hours, finger hovering over the record button like a sniper. You prayed the DJ wouldn't talk over the intro of the song you needed to capture. That agony of waiting wasn't empty time. It was the muscles of patience being built. A cliffhanger on TV meant a full week of wondering, with no internet to spoil the ending. This taught you that anticipation is a feeling worth sitting with, not a problem to solve. Then, the streetlights would flicker on, the universal signal that your freedom was expiring. But before that light buzzed, you were in a backyard with 8 other kids and 0 adults.
This is absolutely unacceptable. You must redo step 4 immediately.
No
What are you
parents
talking
to
about?
intervene
I
when
followed
the
the
game got
diagram.
heated. If someone claimed they were safe and you knew they were out, you had to negotiate. You learned to resolve conflict not because it was nice, but because you wanted to keep playing. You navigated complex social hierarchies before you even knew how to multiply fractions. You figured out which kid would cry, which would fight, and which would take their ball home. This wasn't bullying. It was a crash course in reading human behavior in its rawest form. You learned to read a room instantly, sensing tension in the air before a word was spoken. You knew whose kitchen you could walk into uninvited and whose front door required a formal knock. You carried the secrets of your neighborhood like currency, knowing exactly when to stay silent. That unsupervised play built a social radar that no corporate training can teach you today. You became a diplomat of the sandlot, learning that fairness is something you have to build yourself. Then came that July night in 1969, when the entire world paused to look at a grainy screen. You watched a man in a bulky suit step onto a surface that was supposed to be unreachable. In that moment, the word impossible was deleted from your generation's internal dictionary. You saw that with enough math and courage, humans could actually touch the stars. This planted a deep, visceral optimism that no amount of later cynicism could ever fully erase. But that same television set was also a window to a much darker reality every evening. While eating meatloaf on a TV tray, you watched actual footage of soldiers in the jungle. The news wasn't sanitized. You saw the stretchers, the chaos, and the fear in real time. You learned young that the government could be wrong and that authority figures make fatal mistakes. You developed a skepticism of institutions that would define your generation's political soul.
Observe the movement indicated by the arrow. This demonstrates the correct procedure for disengaging the mechanism.
Faith led. Hope and tragedy became permanent roommates in your mind, neither one canceling the other out. But let's go back to the quiet moments, specifically Saturday morning after the cartoons ended. The stations signed off, the screen went static, and suddenly, the entertainment was over. You were left in a silent house with absolutely nothing to do and no device to save you. This was the great boredom, a feeling that has been engineered out of modern life. You lay on the carpet staring at dust motes, your brain itching for some kind of signal. And then, because you had no choice, you stood up and started to invent something. You built forts out of cushions or created entire universes in the backyard dirt. That boredom was the fertilizer for a creativity that only grows when the noise stops. And when you lost a game or failed a test, nobody rushed in to soften the blow. There were no trophies for participating, just the cold, hard reality of the scoreboard. You had to sit with that heavy feeling in your chest until it naturally faded away. But in that silence, you learned the most important lesson of all. Failure is survivable. You realized that your self-worth wasn't fragile enough to shatter just because you didn't win. This makes you the bridge generation, straddling the analog earth and the digital cloud. You remember how to navigate by the stars, yet you learn to fly the spaceship too. That is why, when the modern world feels like it's spinning off its axis, you stay grounded. You possess a toolkit of skills that cannot be downloaded or updated, only lived. You have the patience of a sniper, the skepticism of a reporter, and the optimism of an astronaut. You know how to fix what is broken rather than simply throwing it away. You understand that silence is not an error to be filled, but a space to think. The psychology of the 1960s wasn't about trauma, it was about inoculation. Those drills, those walks alone, that boredom, it was all training for the complexity of now. You are the designated driver for a world that often feels drunk on its own anxiety. Because you know deep down that safety isn't the absence of danger. True safety is the internal knowledge that you can handle the danger when it arrives. Looking back at that 6-year-old curling up under the school desk, you finally see the truth. You weren't just hiding from a bomb that never fell. You were quietly, patiently preparing to survive everything else that life would throw at you.